Hong Kong's street food isn't a collection of snacks. It's a system. Every stall, alley, and corner shop fills a specific role in the city's rhythm. Some feed commuters in seconds, others anchor entire neighborhoods, and a few have become reference points for the dishes they serve. This list isn't about novelty, it's about the 20 places that define how Hong Kong actually eats. 1. Kam Wah Cafe. Kam Wah Cafe in Mong Kok treats the pineapple bun as a piece of daily engineering, rather than a nostalgic pastry. The entire room runs on a quiet production cycle, dough rising in metal trays, ovens opening and closing in short intervals, and fresh buns appearing at the counter before the previous batch cools. What sets their bolo bao apart is the contrast they build into it. A brittle, almost glass-thin top that fractures instantly, supported by a warm, pliant interior that never turns heavy. Sweetness stays restrained, letting texture do most of the work. Other cafes offer the bun as a side item. Here it's the center of gravity, the product everything else orbits around. The result is a bun served at the exact moment it reaches its ideal state. Kam Wah doesn't trade on memory. It delivers precision disguised as comfort. 2. Tai Cheong Bakery. Tai Cheong Bakery in Central occupies a place in Hong Kong's food landscape that feels earned rather than inherited. The shop's short crust egg tart is built on a pastry that holds its form without turning heavy, breaking apart with a clean, almost silent snap. Inside, the custard sits warm and steady, its sweetness kept in check so the texture can take the lead. Temperature control drives the entire operation. Trays move from oven to counter in a rhythm that keeps the filling just shy of molten. Nothing about the tart feels accidental. Each batch carries the same balance of structure and softness. What people come for isn't nostalgia, but a level of consistency that rarely drifts. Tai Cheong delivers an egg tart that has shaped expectations for generations without ever announcing itself as iconic. 3. Fei Jie. Fei Jie in Mong Kok approaches curry fish balls with a kind of tunnel vision focus that leaves no room for embellishment. The stall sits in a narrow passageway, yet the 2 or 3 people working inside move with a clarity that keeps the line flowing. Fish balls drift through a concentrated curry broth, picking up heat and spice until they reach a firm, elastic bite. The sauce hits quickly, built to make an impression without overwhelming the next skewer. Nothing about the recipe is softened for newcomers. The flavor mirrors the pace of the street outside, direct, fast, and unapologetic. What seems like a simple snack becomes a demonstration of how repetition sharpens a dish rather than dulling it. Fei Jie's approach strips the fishball down to its essentials and delivers it without hesitation. 4. Fei Jie Sister Stall. A few steps from the curry fishball line, the sister stall runs a parallel operation built entirely around skewers. The counter is barely wide enough for 2 workers, yet the space functions with the efficiency of a compact workshop. Metal trays hold offal, squid, tofu, and sausages, each kept at a steady temperature by broths that are constantly tended. Items move through heat in short intervals, so every skewer reaches the customer with its texture intact. The flavors lean bold, but they're delivered with restraint, allowing each ingredient to keep its identity. Transactions happen almost before you register them. A gesture toward the tray, a quick handoff, and the next person steps forward. Variety doesn't slow the operation, it sharpens it. The result is a skewer stand that mirrors the neighborhood's tempo without ever losing control. 5. Hop Yik Tai. Hop Yik Tai in Sham Shui Po turns rice noodle rolls into a study of steadiness and restraint. From the street, the shop looks unassuming, but inside, the team moves through the steaming and folding process with a calm, practiced tempo. Sheets of chung fun slide out of the trays, soft and elastic, carrying a smoothness that lets the sauces cling without breaking the surface. The seasoning stays pared back. Soy, sesame, a touch of sweetness, enough to frame the noodles without masking their texture. The entire operation feels built around preserving the noodles' suppleness from steamer to tray. There's no flourish, no attempt to dress the dish up. The appeal lies in how quietly it's executed. Hop Yik Tai delivers chung fun that succeeds through understatement and consistency rather than spectacle. 6. Mammy Pancake. Mammy Pancake treats the egg waffle as a precision object rather than a casual street snack. The irons, worn smooth from constant use, heat evenly enough to create a shell that snaps cleanly while keeping the interior soft and aerated. Each bubble holds its shape just long enough to collapse on the bite, giving the waffle its signature contrast. Flavors rotate, but the base batter stays remarkably stable, light, structured, and tuned to withstand high heat without turning brittle. Behind the counter, the team works in short, efficient loops, flipping irons and adjusting temperature with the kind of attention that comes from long repetition. Consistency here comes from accumulated muscle memory, not rigid choreography. What customers receive is a waffle that feels both familiar and sharpened. Mammy Pancake shows how a ubiquitous snack can become something far more deliberate. 7. Four Seasons. Claypot rice. Four Seasons Claypot rice in Yau Ma Tei treats its signature dish as a piece of heat management rather than a rustic comfort food. Rows of clay pots sit directly over open flame, each one positioned to build the scorched base that gives the dish its character. Workers tend to the pots with a kind of sensory awareness, shifting them by inches, lifting lids to release steam, and listening for the faint crackle that signals the crust is forming. Toppings change from order to order, but the method stays steady. Rice first, ingredients layered on top. Soy added only when the pot is seconds from leaving the fire. The dish arrives still hissing, the char rising through the grains as you stir. Four Seasons doesn't rely on theatrics. It relies on control over flame, moisture, and timing. The result is claypot rice that feels both grounded and deliberately constructed. 8. Yat Lok. Yat Lok in Central approaches roast goose with a level of discipline that feels closer to craft manufacturing than restaurant cooking. Whole birds move through the kitchen in a steady progression, marinated, dried, roasted, rested, each stage timed to protect the skin's snap and the meat's moisture. The glaze sets into a thin, glassy layer that stays crisp even as the fat underneath begins to soften. Seasoning stays restrained, designed to amplify the bird's richness rather than compete with it. Carving happens with almost metronomic consistency, every portion cut to preserve the balance between skin and flesh. Out in the dining room, the pace is brisk, shaped by a constant turnover of diners who know exactly what they came for. Yat Lok's goose doesn't rely on nostalgia or comfort. It stands out because the kitchen refuses to let the process drift even a fraction. 9. Max Noodle. Max Noodle in Central treats wonton noodles as a calibration exercise, each component tuned to protect the bowl's structure from the moment it leaves the counter. The famously small portions aren't a quirk, they're a way to keep the noodles firm and springy before the broth has time to soften them. That broth arrives clear and intensely aromatic, built from dried shrimp, pork bones, and flounder, simmered in proportions that have barely shifted over generations. Wontons are folded tight, holding just enough shrimp to give a clean snap without turning heavy. The noodles cook in seconds, lifted from the pot at the exact moment they reach their ideal tension. Heat, texture, and timing converge so cleanly that the dish feels almost weightless. Max doesn't chase novelty. It relies on a formula that has been tightened until nothing extraneous remains. 10. Kwan Kee. Kwan Kee in Central runs on a momentum that feels built into the walls. A narrow room, a constant line, and bowls leaving the kitchen in a steady, unbroken stream. The broth, whether clear or curry-rich, carries depth without drifting into heaviness, the result of long simmering and careful skimming. Brisket arrives in firm, structured slices that hold together even as they warm in the bowl. Noodles cook moments before serving, lifted from the pot while they still have bite. Tables reset almost instantly, the room turning over with a pace that never feels forced. What lands in front of you is straightforward but sharply executed. A bowl built from repetition, heat, and timing. Kwan Kee's appeal comes from how little it tries to be anything other than efficient and exact. 11. Wing Kee. Wing Kee in Causeway Bay treats cart noodles as a modular craft, letting the customer shape the bowl while the kitchen maintains the pace. The counter is lined with trays of simmering ingredients: brisket, radish, fish skin, pork intestines, curry squid, each kept at a steady temperature so textures stay distinct. Behind the counter, the team assembles each order in a few clean motions, stacking ingredients in a sequence that keeps the bowl balanced from top to bottom. Broth choices range from mild to forceful, but all of them are tuned to support whatever ends up in the ladle. The dish doesn't exist until the customer defines it, and that flexibility is built into the stall's rhythm. Wing Kee thrives on this interplay between personal preference and fast execution, turning customization into something streamlined rather than chaotic. 12. Dim Dim Sum. Dim Dim Sum in Jordan runs its dining room with the tempo of a street stall, compressing the dim sum experience into something fast, direct, and deliberately unceremonious. Steamers open and close in short intervals, and dishes move from counter to table before the heat has time to fade. Xiao Mai Har Gao, rice rolls, and baked buns appear in a steady flow, each one shaped by constant turnover rather than tea house ritual. The flavors stay rooted in tradition, but the pacing belongs to the surrounding streets. Quick decisions, quick service, quick resets. There's no choreography meant to slow the meal down. The focus is on keeping food at its peak the moment it leaves the steamer. Dim Dim Sum shows how a classic format can be compressed without losing its craft, turning dim sum into something built for dense, modern Hong Kong. 13. Song Ki. Song Ki in Heung Yuen approaches congee with a kind of patience that gives the bowl its character long before any toppings are added. The pot is kept at a slow, steady simmer until the grains break down into a smooth, almost velvety base that needs no thickening. Each order is built individually with ingredients dropped in only when the bowl is ready, so they soften in the heat without losing their shape. The fish version shows the kitchen's touch most clearly. Thin slices that turn tender the moment they meet the congee, staying clean and bright rather than clouding the broth. Seasoning stays restrained, letting the natural sweetness of the stock carry the flavor. Service moves quietly with bowls ladled and garnished in a few unhurried motions. Song Ki's congee succeeds because it relies on time, temperature, and restraint rather than embellishment. 14. Kwan Kee. Kwan Kee in Sham Shui Po approaches traditional Cantonese desserts with a kind of measured steadiness that keeps every item true to its original form. Steamers and trays move through the kitchen in short, frequent intervals, producing black sesame soup, red bean soup, and steamed sponge cake in batches small enough to protect their texture. Each dessert arrives with a clarity that comes from relying on ingredient quality rather than heavy sweetening. Bowls are ladled and trays cut with motions shaped by long familiarity, the kind of repetition that sharpens technique without calling attention to itself. The shop doesn't chase reinvention or modern reinterpretation. It focuses on keeping each dessert as it has always been, warm, balanced, and quietly exact. Kwan Kee's strength lies in how faithfully it maintains these classics without turning them into museum pieces. 15. Sun Heung Yuen. Sun Heung Yuen in Sham Shui Po treats its beef and egg sandwich like a small piece of morning infrastructure, something built to function flawlessly at high volume. The bread is toasted just enough to hold its shape, staying soft at the center while offering a light edge for structure. Beef slices cook quickly in shallow batches, thin enough to absorb seasoning without turning dry. The egg is folded into a neat layer that gives the sandwich its stability, adding warmth without weighing it down. Behind the counter, each person handles a single task, creating a flow that feels more like a relay than a kitchen. There's no reinvention, no attempt to elevate the formula, only a commitment to making the same item with unwavering steadiness. Sun Heung Yuen's appeal comes from how reliably it delivers something simple, fast, and quietly exact. 16. Sham Shui Po street stalls. Sham Shui Po street stalls operate like a loose grid of specialists, each focused on a narrow slice of Hong Kong's food culture. One cart handles skewers, another noodles, another tofu pudding, another herbal drinks. Small units working side by side, each maintaining its own pace. Pots simmer, grills cycle, and trays are refreshed in short intervals, keeping heat and texture intact without relying on large batches. The flavors stay straightforward, shaped by repetition and the demands of steady foot traffic. Prices remain low because turnover never slows. The neighborhood's density keeps the entire system in motion. What emerges isn't a collection of isolated stands, but a street-level ecosystem where every cart handles one task with steady focus. Sham Shui Po's strength comes from how seamlessly these pieces fit together, creating a food circuit that runs from morning to late night without losing momentum. 17. The Night Market Snack Circuit. Temple Street's food corridor runs as one of the last places in Hong Kong where open-air cooking still stretches across an entire block. Stalls line the street in dense succession, grills, woks, steamers, and makeshift kitchens operating within arm's reach of one another. The scent shifts every few steps, shaped by whatever dish is hitting heat at that moment. Tables spill onto the pavement, forming a dining space defined more by foot traffic and neon glare than by walls or boundaries. Lighting comes from bare bulbs and aging signs, functional, uneven, and unmistakably urban. Temple Street isn't curated or staged. It operates because every stall keeps its own pace while feeding into the larger flow. The corridor feels like a fragment of an older Hong Kong that persists through sheer continuity. 18. Lei Yue Mun's. Lei Yue Mun runs on a form of seafood dining that feels inseparable from its shoreline. The experience begins at the tanks, where fish, prawns, clams, and crab move in slow loops under bright lights, and customers choose their meal with the deliberation of a market purchase. Staff weigh each selection, note cooking preferences, and pass the order to kitchens that respond almost immediately. Sauces stay restrained, so the texture of the seafood remains intact. The waterfront isn't a backdrop. It's the supply chain in real time, linking tanks, kitchens, and tables within a few meters. Lei Yue Mun functions less like a village and more like a cluster of kitchens built around proximity, speed, and an unbroken flow from water to wok. 19. Australia Dairy Company, Jordan. Australia Dairy Company runs with a velocity that feels built into its walls. Bright lights, tight tables, and a turnover rate that resets the room every few minutes. Orders are taken, delivered, and cleared in a sequence so fast it borders on mechanical, yet the kitchen maintains a level of consistency that keeps the place full from open to close. The menu stays focused: scrambled eggs, toast, macaroni soup, milk tea. The eggs remain the draw, cooked to a soft, glossy texture that borders on custard without ever slipping into sweetness. Macaroni lands on the table moments after it's called out, its mild broth acting as a counterbalance to the richness of the eggs. Service is abrupt, but the pace is intentional. A system tuned for volume, not ceremony. Australia Dairy Company distills the Cha Chan Teng format into something fast, exact, and unmistakably urban, a reminder of how efficiency became part of Hong Kong's culinary identity. 20. The Street Food Dessert Peak. Hong Kong's street dessert scene concentrates around the city's busiest corridors: Sham Shui Po, Mong Kok, Jordan, where small stalls cluster near transit routes and operate with a tempo shaped by foot traffic. Each vendor focuses on a single item: egg waffles, tofu pudding, herbal jelly, sweet soups, glutinous rice balls. Batter is mixed in short intervals, puddings are portioned only when ordered, and syrups are kept warm without drifting into caramelization. Most people eat standing up, finishing their dessert within minutes, because temperature and texture fade quickly. Flavors remain straightforward, leaning on heat, freshness, and contrast rather than heavy sugar. Vendors repeat the same motions throughout the night: ladling, folding, scooping, refining technique through sheer volume. There's no plating, no pause, no attempt at presentation. These stalls treat dessert as part of the city's street-level infrastructure, something delivered fast, hot, and with a clarity that matches Hong Kong's broader approach to everyday food. Hong Kong's street food isn't random, it's a network, shaped by density, repetition, and the pressure of a city that eats in motion. These 20 places aren't just good, they're the points where that system shows its sharpest edges. Start with any of them, and the rest of the map begins to make sense.